am about to show you all a deck that I am going to regret putting into your hands. I'm going to regret putting this in anyone's hands, because the types of things that this deck can do to people when it gets going are evil. They are actually borderline Geneva Convention crimes, and I'm not doing this as clickbait. You've already clicked the video. That's it. You're already here, and you're going to hear me out when I tell you about Brudiclad, the Telcore Engineer, and the myriad ways he is going to be used to make your opponent's lives absolutely miserable. All for about $15 to $16. Brudiclad, the Telcore Engineer, is an Izzet and 4/4/4 Phyrexian Artificer Commander that says all of your creature tokens get haste. And at the beginning of combat on your turn, make a 2/1 blue Phyrexian Mirror token, and then each other token you control becomes a copy of that token. Now, on its surface, it's hard to really see what this is going to do to harm our opponents. Yes, it allows us to make token copies of things, but the only things it can copy are cards that have already become tokens. Some of the easiest things that come to mind are turning a bunch of things into treasures, or turning a bunch of treasures into other things. However, let's go ahead and talk about some of the things we are going to copy that are going to be far more busted than you might think. Beginning with this one, Falcon Wrath Perforator. When this attacks, it deals 1 damage to defending player. Now, that doesn't seem like a whole lot, but imagine if we turn, say, 20 treasures into Falcon Wrath Perforators and swing them at our opponent. Now they burn for 20 instantaneously, and that's not counting what's going to happen when combat happens, right? And then we have Panicked Altisaur. Again, imagine the 10 to 20 treasure scenario. We turn all of our treasures into copies of the Panicked Altisaur, and then we tap them all to deal 2 damage to every opponent. All of our creature tokens gain haste, so we are allowed to do this instantaneously thanks to our commander. Brimstone Trebuchet will do the same thing, as will Unruly Catapult and Lobber Crew. Spitfire Lagok will create the same scenario for us, but whenever we play a land, we will get the 1 damage to every opponent from the Spitfire Lagok. However, in our case, it's going to be closer to 8 or 10 damage. Then we have Tectonic Giant. Whenever this attacks or becomes the target of a spell an opponent controls, we can deal 3 damage to every opponent. We turn all of our tokens into copies of the Giant, and this is probably going to win the game instantaneously. Then we have NX Hardened in the Forge. This is effectively a doubling season for our deck. Whenever it or another non-token creature dies, we create a 1/1 red satyr token. However, if the creature had power 4 or greater, we create 2 of those tokens instead. Now, because it says it or a non-token, that means a token version of an axe will work. So if we turn 10 treasures into copies of an axe, they will all be an axes with power equal to our devotion to red, which, thanks to the conversion, will now be somewhere close to 20 or 21 or 22 devotion to red. Now, all of the 20 some odd power and axes self-destruct and become 1/1 red satyrs, but they become 2 of each satyr because they had power 4 or greater at the moment that they died to the legendary rule. This means on subsequent turns, we will have double the amount of tokens that we originally had to do this strategy with over and over and over again. Tuk Tuk the Explorer has a similar effect. It's a legendary creature that when it dies, it'll put a 5/5 colorless goblin token on the board. If we turn all of our tokens into copies of Tuk Tuk, then they will all simultaneously die, becoming the much more powerful Goblin Golem artifact creatures. The Coruscation Mage makes a token copy of itself, meaning we don't have to find another way to make a token copy before we make our army of copies, and the Mage says anytime we cast a non-creature spell, we deal 1 damage to every opponent. Territorial Hellkite is a way to burn our opponents to death with straight combat damage, as it's a 4-mana creature we can clone once and then do the multi-clone with Brudiclad. Sings of the Second Sun is incredibly deadly. If we have all of our treasures, say, become copies of Sphinx of the Second Sun, not only is it a 6/6 flyer that can kill a single player, but it'll give us about 15 different beginning phases at the end of our turn, meaning we'll draw 15 cards and untap our lands 15 times. There's a lot of ways we can use that to our advantage. Feldon of the Third Path can be used to make a creature token copy of anything in our graveyard, which will make it far easier to start what we need with our commander. And, this is the evil one. This is Kega the Tide Star, a legendary creature that if it dies, we gain control of any target creature. This means if we have, say, 5 treasures, and we make them all copies of Kiga, we immediately will have them self-destruct to the legendary rule, and we will gain control of, permanently, 5 creatures on the board, not counting the 1 creature that we gained control of when the initial Kiga died after we copied it. Now, we do need to make sure we can copy our cards initially so that everything can work out the way we need, so we have 8 ways of doing that alone. Saheeli's Artistry can create a token copy of an artifact or a creature and then turn it into an artifact. Saheeli can make any of our artifacts become a copy of another artifact or creature on the board. Use this to turn a treasure token into a copy of any of our creatures, like, say, Kiga. This will automatically kill the original Kiga, and now we have a token copy of Kiga we can clone out with Brudiclad. Mirage Mockery creates a token copy of an artifact creature we control or a non-artifact creature we control. Cackling Counterpart makes a copy of a creature and has Flashback. Quasi-Duplicate does the same thing, but has Jumpstart. Faded Infatuation does the same thing, but it gives us a Scry on top of it. Saheeli allows us to make a token copy of any creature or artifact, which will allow us to start things off. And C-Double will create a copy of a spell or a token. And if an opponent has 8 or more cards in our graveyard, we can use this at instant speed to do both of these at the same time. Now, that is a lot of ways to copy things, but we do need more ways to make tokens besides the one silly one that our commander does. So let's go ahead and add in a Whirler Rogue to immediately give us 2 Thopters we can turn into copies of anything. Hate Mirage says choose up to 2 creatures, and for each of those tokens, we make a copy of those tokens. This gives us 2 creatures we can clone away with our commander, or just 2 more tokens we can use to turn into other things. Sharding Sphinx gives us a 1/1 blue Thopter anytime one of our artifacts we have deals combat damage to a player. This means if we have 10 Thopters, we hit somebody with those, we now have 20 Thopters, and on the following turn, we turn those 20 Thopters into whatever we want. Urza's Command can make a Power Stone token and also make a colorless Construct token that has power and toughness equal to the artifacts we control. In a world where we have 10 treasures, we can use Urza's Command to make 10 constructs that all have 10 power, 10 toughness. Mimic Vat can make token copies of anything at all that dies. Loyal Apprentice makes a 1/1 Thopter anytime we go into our combat step. Okiva Enigma Goliath allows us to make a bunch of red Phyrexian tokens anytime that we cast a non-creature spell. Mere Battlesphere makes 4 Mere tokens whenever it touches the board, and Bloodforged Battleaxe makes copies of itself whenever we need. And we can also turn all of our tokens into copies of the Bloodforged Battleaxe so that our commander can just lethal a player, or a flying creature can lethal a player very, very easily. And finally, we have one more way to make token copies become a problem, and that's with mechanized production. We can use this as an I win button. At the beginning of our upkeep, we make a token copy of an enchanted artifact, giving us another token for our commander. And then if we have 8 or more artifacts with the same name as the one another, we instantly win the game. This, combined with our commander, will win the game no matter what the board state is looking like. But if you don't like this combo, then you can swap this out for a Blasphemous Act or other board wipe, as the entire goal of this is to break parity with problematic board states. That all said, those are a lot of token copies and a lot of tokens and a lot of ways to make everything we need to make this brutal copy deck work. However, we do need to be able to dig through our deck in order to play it. So let's go ahead and talk about the deck's draw engine. Now, the draw engine of this deck is fairly simple. Every single card that draws us something needs to either benefit from tokens or create tokens on its own so it can supplement what our commander is already doing. So let's go ahead and add the new Glimmerburst card into here. It's one of the 10 draw cards we are going to be using, and when we use this, we get to draw 2 cards and make 2 1/1 white glimmers, which we can then turn into anything else. Pirate's Prize draws us 2 cards and then makes a colorless treasure artifact afterwards. Pirate's Pillage draws us 2 cards after discarding a card and makes us 2 treasures. Big Score does the same thing, and Seize the Spoils does the same thing, but it only makes 1 treasure. Inspired Tinkering makes 3 treasures and gives us Impulse Draw of 3 cards. Glimpse the Impossible gives us Impulse Draw of 3 cards, and then if we don't use those cards, they convert into Eldrazi tokens. Thopter Spy Network makes a 1/1 Thopter every upkeep, and whenever one of our artifacts deals damage to a player, we get to draw a card. Idol of Oblivion draws us a card any turn that we've made tokens, and Collector's Vault allows us to loot for 2 mana and make a treasure token every time we do. All in all, this means that the draw engine of the deck should be doing a fantastic job at getting us to the end game, irrespective of whether we draw the cards that we need. But we do still need to make sure our opponents do not have complicated board states, so let's talk about clearing those out. This deck is a little light on removal, more so than I am normally comfortable with, but we're going to try to make it work irrespective of that. Let's begin with Siphon Essence, a card that can counter a creature or a planeswalker spell while making a blood token for us, which we can then convert into other things later. Cancels a basic counter spell, Abrade can blow up an artifact or a creature, Negate can counter any non-creature spell, Resculpt can get rid of an artifact or a creature and then replace it with a 4/4, Release the Gremlins blows up X target artifact, and then we make X goblins in response to that. Red Sun's Twilight does the same thing, but if X is 5 or more, then we make a token copy of every artifact that we destroyed this way. Chaos Warp can get rid of any problematic card on the board, and Izzet Charm can be used to counter a spell, or draw 2 cards and discard 2 cards, or deal 2 damage to a creature, depending on what the situation requires. We are also running a single board wipe due to our colors that is Perplexing Test. Return all creature tokens to their hand, or all non-token creatures to their owner's hand. Whichever side of this you choose, just make sure that it is as asymmetrical as humanly possible. That said, let's go ahead and talk about mana next. Thanks to all the treasure tokens we're producing, we're not really using that many ramp pieces this time around. Only 9, just like our removal package. Let's begin with Arcane Signet and Izzet Signet, 2 mana rocks that do what you need them to do, no more, no less. Mind Stone to sack to draw a card later. Honored Heirloom to get rid of problematic cards in a graveyard while also being a mana rock. Command Sphere for the same reason as Mind Stone. Warren Power Stone because it is way easier to run on budget now and our commander costs a hefty sum. Enthusiastic Mechanaut to discount the cost of all 18 of our deck's artifacts. And Liquid Metal Torque so that our Abrade is able to hit more problematic cards while also being a mana rock in and of itself. And finally, a Sad Robot because making a clone of Sad Robot is always a damn good time. And as for lands, we are going to be running 13 islands and 13 mountains, with Ferris Lake, Frostboil, Snarl, Command Tower, and Exotic Orchard making up our dual lands. And our fetching lands will be Promising Vein, Shire Terrace, Myriad Landscape, and Grixis Panorama. And we're going to be running some utility lands in place of the usual fetchers that I try to run. Pit of Offerings, as usual, to get rid of problematic graveyard cards. Gargoyle Castle to make a 3/4 colorless gargoyle token when we sacrifice it, which we can use for our commander. Kerkeep to make red kobolds we can use for our commander, and Volatile Fault, which can blow up a non-basic land and give us a treasure token, which again we can use with our commander's abilities. All in all, we have one of the cleanest mana packages in most of the decks I've made, in that it's very simple, because we don't need a whole lot with our reliance on treasures. But that all said, let's go ahead and talk about how to play the deck before we talk about anything else. Let's go ahead and talk keepable hands. So you want a hand that has 2 to 3 lands, and you want a hand with a way to draw and some ramp, and in this deck, some way to generate our first starting token. Looking at our hand, we have 3 ways to get tokens, 1 removal spell, 1 ramp spell, 1 draw spell, and of course, we have 2 lands. We'd like to try for more lands, but this hand is so close to perfect, we may get punished in a mulligan, so let's go ahead and keep it. Starting off, we draw Seize the Spoils, and let's go ahead and play that Volatile Fault. In turn 2, we get the Shire Terrace, which is exactly what we need. Now we can go ahead and sacrifice our Shire Terrace and get an island out of the deck, which will put us exactly where we needed to be in terms of colors and everything else. So we can move into turn 3 pretty well set up. Now, we have a choice here. We can either play our Warren Power Stone, or we can play Saheeli. But I think, for speed's sake, the best thing we can do is get the Power Stone on the board and hope for a draw of a land. And we did get it in turn 4 with the Mountain. So we have that Mountain, and we have access to 6 mana. Let's go ahead and get our commander out on turn 4, so we can go ahead and start making our tokens. This will also bait out any removal that our opponents have. If they do end up removing our commander, we can generate treasure tokens to get it back out. Not the worst case scenario, but it does put us in a decent position this early. Next turn, and we've lucked out by drawing a mountain. So let's go ahead and take a look at where we are at on our board. We have access to 7 mana, and we have access to 1 token we'll be able to generate with Brudiclad. I think getting a board state is the most important thing we can do right now. So let's go ahead and look at what we are sitting on. We have Seize the Spoils, which will generate a treasure token for us. So let's tap the Worn Power Stone and that mountain, play Seize the Spoils to draw 2 cards, discarding one of the ones from our hand. Let's say we got rid of the Release the Gremlins. Let's say we're not dealing with too many problematic artifacts in this particular game. This generates 1 treasure token for us. Now, we've got a Promising Vein here that we can play down as a land, but we're not really too terribly concerned with it, all things considered. So what we need to see is, do we set up a board that will threaten our opponents immediately, or do we set up a board that has us more prepared for a follow-up turn? And I think getting Idol of Oblivion out and Saheeli sets us up for a strong follow-up turn, but does not give away our game plan immediately. The Idol of Oblivion draws us a card, and Saheeli will be able to generate a token for us later. We get our extra Phyrexian Mirror, and we choose not to do anything with those mirrors. In fact, actually, what we can do instead is we can filter all of those mirrors into treasure tokens, or they will be far more protected from a potential board wipe. We're on turn 6 now, and we can go ahead and play the Promising Vein. Looking at what we have a counter spell. We have Hate Mirage to choose up to 2 target creatures we don't control and make token copies of them. And we have Annex. Looking at where we're at, I think the correct move for us is going to be to tap 1, 2, 3, and go ahead and play Annex on the board. Now, after this, we can go ahead and use Saheeli and 2 islands to create a token copy of Annex. This token copy will be legendary like the original Annex, so we are going to choose to lose our original Annex. This isn't the greatest thing in the world. We are not super happy about that happening. However, it does happen, and we do generate 2 1/1 red satyrs as a result of that. Actually, because we have Annex on the board, we'll generate 4 red satyrs, because the Annex token will see an Annex that dies, and the original Annex will see itself that dies. We can tap the Idol of Oblivion to draw us a card, and looking at where we're at right now, we can go ahead and enter combat. Entering combat, of course, generates a single mirror token that we have access to, and that Phyrexian mirror that we have on the board is now going to become a copy of Annex. In fact, we will be turning everything on our board into a copy of Annex right now. That means we have 3 Annexes from the treasures, 3 Annexes from the satyrs, and 1 Annex from what was originally our Phyrexian goblin. Getting rid of all of those, we are going to go ahead and let the legendary rule kill most of these. We're going to keep 1 token Annex, but the token Annex we made with Saheeli will die, as that Annex, if it were to stay on the board, would sacrifice itself at the end of the turn. So we are going to lose 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, I believe it is 8 copies of Annex. All of these will die. Our last Annex will see, or all the Annexes see the deaths, and we will generate 16 satyrs as they see themselves die. Now our board state looks like this, with about 16 satyrs with haste that can swing at an opponent and harm them greatly. And if our board is kept like this, we will be winning the game in the following turn, because when we draw, we can go ahead and play a land for turn, and we can tap 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and play the Panicked Altisaur. Saheeli is going to clone that Panicked Altisaur, and when we go into combat, we will make another clone token thanks to our Brudiclad. We will then transform every single one of these satyr tokens that we have, all 16 of them, as soon as I can grab them, into 16 copies of Panicked Altisaur. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. With 16 copies of Panicked Altisaur, plus the original Panicked Altisaur that does not have haste, and the token copy that does have haste that we made. Oh, and this NX becomes a Panicked Altisaur as well because of the conversion. We have the ability to burn everybody for 16, 17, 18 times 2. We will tap all of the Panicked Altisaurs, burning our opponents for 36 damage. And just a quick reminder, we still get our draw off of our Idol of Oblivion in case something goes wrong. This is a turn 7 win. Everybody burning for 36 on turn 7 is just a win. Like, we just win the game off of that, right? And if there is one player who happens to still have life afterwards, then they're still gonna end up dying, because in the following turn, we'll tap the Altisaurs again. If they happen to have a board wipe and they get rid of everything on our board, we lose Brudiclad and we'll lose all of these creatures for the one person who is still alive. And to deal with that one person, we'll tap 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and Brudiclad will come back onto the board with, of course, his little mirror token that he was able to make last time too. That mirror token has haste, and we get to draw a card off the Idol of Oblivion once more. With our hasted mirror token, if they've board wiped us, the likelihood that they have a board is very low. They'll take 2 damage from the mirror and be that much closer to dying, if not already dead. In the event that they are still alive after that, though, we can then go ahead and go for the coup de grace. Loyal Apprentice will spawn us a token when we need it, and we can go ahead and use Whirler Rogue here. Our Volatile Fault can be used to create a treasure token, which we will then filter into the Whirler Rogue to make 2 colorless Thopter tokens. And with those Thopter tokens, we don't have anything else we really need to do, but that will give us 4 Thopter tokens when we go into combat. And remember, we dealt 36 damage in the previous turn, so this is lethal with hasted Thopter tokens if we end up needing that extra damage. Again, this is assuming that nobody dealt damage to anybody ever during any of this. If they did take damage in any other way, then they're just dead. And if they didn't, they're dead here too anyway. And hell, I may even have some of the math wrong on the way that all of this ends up working, but it still ends up being in our favor that we've dealt that much damage that quickly. We've eliminated 2 players by turn 7, and we've eliminated the final one by turn 8 or 9, depending on what else has knocked their life down throughout the game. All in all, after every time I've playtested this deck, its ability to create a very strong board state very quickly is insane. Because you can make so many treasures that can be turned into problematic artifacts and turned back into treasures when need be, it's very easy for the commander to replace itself. And any turn that your commander is not turning all of your cards into a problematic artifact, you can just turn all of your tokens into treasure tokens in case you get board wiped. It's just an insanely powerful deck, and I absolutely adore it. But what would you do if you had a little more money to throw at this thing? If I was going to choose one card that would upgrade this deck far higher than anything that it's already doing, that one card would be Academy Manufacturer. This thing is a house, and it effectively triples all the treasure tokens you make, as anytime you make a treasure, you'll make a clue food and a treasure, and then you will turn them all into treasures again with Brudiclad's ability. All things considered, this card is a house, and it is insane the amount of value this adds to your deck. If we are going past the budget, though, we can also add another Unexpected Windfall. More Seize the Spoils and Big Score style cards do really well with this deck. A Coup de Grace in Clone Legion is also fantastic. Making a token copy of everything we don't control, and then turning all the tokens we control into the strongest thing amongst those creatures is amazing. Psymaster Thopterus gives us really consistent Thopters throughout the game, Blue Sun's Twilight lets us do Clone Legion on a single card, and then we can turn all of our tokens into whatever that is. Imagine having 20 Archon of Cruelties with this. Then we have Ortherian, Hero of Lava Brink. This is just another Saheeli for the deck. Give us another way to make a clone copy that begins everything the way that we need it to begin. Untimely Malfunction can protect our commander and give us really good removal. There and back again, if this ends up hitting its third mode, we just win the game. Making a legendary Smog and 14 treasures, think. You can turn those treasures into anything. Even turning them into Thopters probably kills a person at that stage of the game. 3 steps ahead, can counter a spell, draw a stuff, and also create a token copy when we need it to. Helm of the Host lets us create non-legendary token copies of anything, including our commander, which we'll be able to use to great effect in this deck. Lightning Greaves to keep our commander online and ticking. And finally, a Wormcoil Engine. Cloning this is already fantastic, as the clones are basically immune to board wipes, but if the Wormcoil Engine dies and we have to turn all of our stuff into 3/3 Death Touchers, that's not the worst thing in the world either. Wormcoil Engine is probably one of the most fun things you could add to a deck like this when you are upgrading it. And really, that's all I've got to say about this. I think that Brudiclad is a fantastically powerful commander, and while he used to be the only option that we had for like a mirror commander before we got Urtet, he still can do lots of work in other decks. I've used him in the 99 of a lot of decks, including Ashnod in the past, decks that I absolutely adore. So I thought it was finally time to go ahead and make a deck featuring him himself, where he's able to do his clone shenanigans to the utmost degree. That said, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and hopefully this video finds you all well. If you haven't subscribed already, please consider doing so. Every single subscriber is incredible, and we just passed 6,000 subscribers. I would love to hit 10,000 before the end of the year. That would mean the world to me. That all said, if you have any suggestions for the deck that you would like to add in, let me know in the comments below. And if you've got a deck that you would like me to build, then let me know down there as well. All things considered, I hope that you guys enjoyed the video, and as always, everybody, insert end of video tagline here. Hey, just wanted to give a quick thank you to all of my wonderful patrons who help keep me afloat and help keep this channel going. YouTube and Twitch are wonderful platforms, but at the end of the day, stability is not one of their strong suits. If you want to support my channel, then obviously Patreon is one of the best ways of doing that. Link is in the description. But I do want to personally thank everybody who has contributed to the channel. Those people would be Red Joker, Purple Poundini, Jemshin, Britzkrieg, Jupe the Malignant, Michael, Ravelern, Mabbity Babbity, Astral Frontier, Autumn and Angel, Nixie Chan, Agamotto, Victorian Alchemist, I'm not saying the last part of that, and you know that, Arcton Arclacier, Kiratorian, Dren Hadamata, Jordan M, John L, Lord Bleck, Smiling Game Master, and Fireshard. And everyone else who supports my channel and lets me do what I do full time. This is a dream job of mine that I never believed that I would be able to take full time, and with your help, I've been able to do it. So thank you so very much for that. Thank you for watching the video. I hope you all enjoy, and I hope you all are having a wonderful time. I will see you all in the next one, hopefully.